Paris Michael Catherine Jackson made her grand entrance into the world on April 3, 1998, in a swirl of unparalleled global anticipation and speculation. Born to the king of pop, Michael Jackson, she was instantly thrust into a lineage of extraordinary fame, yet simultaneously shielded from its most intrusive aspects. Her arrival, preceded by her older brother Prince, solidified Michael's journey into fatherhood, a role he would embrace with a ferocity and dedication that surprised many. From the very first breath, her life was destined to be an intricate tapestry woven with threads of immense privilege, boundless love, and an almost unimaginable level of public scrutiny. Michael's most defining characteristic as a parent was his fierce, almost uncompromising desire to protect his children, Prince Michael I, Paris, and later Prince Michael II, Blanket, who would come to be known as Biggie, from the relentless, often brutal glare of the public eye that had been his constant companion since early childhood. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. This unwavering commitment to their privacy manifested in what became one of the most iconic and perhaps most misunderstood images of their early lives. Masks, scarves, or veils covering their faces whenever they appeared in public. For countless onlookers, these disguises were a source of endless fascination, bewilderment, and even criticism. They sparked rampant speculation. Was it an act of extreme eccentricity? Was it a bizarre controlling measure? Was it a perpetuation of Michael's own reclusiveness? Yet from Michael's perspective, these seemingly strange garments were a desperate, heartfelt, and ultimately genuine attempt to afford his beloved children a fragile semblance of normalcy. He yearned for them to experience a childhood unburdened by the crushing weight of paparazzi flashes, the constant dissection of their innocent faces, and the invasive, often cruel, tabloid headlines that had plagued his own existence for decades. He understood perhaps more acutely and painfully than any other individual alive the immense pressure, the suffocating lack of privacy, and the inherent dehumanization that came with his unparalleled level of global fame. His deepest, most fervent desire was to allow his kids the simple, fundamental freedom to be just kids, to visit a local park without causing a media frenzy, to grab a quick bite at a restaurant without being mobbed, to simply exist without their every blink, smile, or whispered word being photographed, meticulously analyzed, and sensationally distorted. He frequently articulated this profound wish, explaining that he wanted them to have the choice of whether or not to live a public life once they were old enough to comprehend the implications and make an informed decision for themselves. A fundamental choice that he tragically was famously denied from the tenderest age of 5. This powerful, almost primal protective instinct, while undeniably unconventional in its public execution, underscored his boundless and unconditional love for them. He wasn't just the greatest entertainer on earth. To them, he was simply daddy, and their well-being, both emotional and physical, was his absolute non-negotiable priority. Growing up primarily within the enchanting yet deeply isolated confines of the legendary Neverland Ranch, Paris and her brothers experienced a childhood that seamlessly blended the fantastical with the profoundly unique. Neverland, nestled majestically in the Santa Ynez Valley of California, transcended the definition of a mere home. It was a whimsical playground and a private sanctuary, unlike any other place on Earth. With its full-fledged amusement park rides, a meticulously curated private zoo teeming with exotic animals from giraffes to elephants, a grand cinematic theater, and sprawling, meticulously maintained gardens. It was a dream world brought vividly to life by their father's boundless imagination and immense resources. Here, within its secured perimeter, they were truly free. Free to explore every hidden corner, to imagine without limits, to play without interruption, and to learn without intrusion. Their education was almost exclusively provided by private tutors within the ranch, further limiting their exposure to typical social environments, conventional schooling, and the potential for intrusive interactions with outsiders. While this insulated upbringing undoubtedly fostered an incredibly close, almost symbiotic bond with their father and an inseparable camaraderie amongst themselves, it also inevitably meant a distinct lack of engagement with conventional social structures, setting them apart from other children their age in ways that would only become profoundly apparent later in life. Their understanding of the real world was, by necessity, filtered almost entirely through Michael's unique and often idealized lens. Despite the enigmatic masks, the secluded lifestyle, and the undeniably unconventional nature of their upbringing, Paris consistently spoke of her father as an extraordinarily loving, deeply attentive, and incredibly present parent. She recounted cherished, vivid memories that painted a picture of a devoted father, him clumsily but lovingly cooking breakfast for them in the mornings, spinning enchanting bedtime stories that captured their imaginations, and ensuring their childhood was brimming with unadulterated joy, wonder, and a profound sense of security. He diligently instilled in them a deep and enduring love for knowledge, for all forms of art, for music in its purest form, and a profound respect for humanity itself. He frequently emphasized the paramount importance of compassion, empathy, and tirelessly giving back to those less fortunate, often involving them in his philanthropic endeavors or simply in discussions about global issues. He actively encouraged their individual creativity, celebrating their unique talents and fostering an environment where their burgeoning individualities were not just tolerated, but wholeheartedly celebrated. Yet even within this seemingly idyllic, almost fairy tale-like bubble, the extraordinary, almost surreal nature of their lives couldn't be entirely escaped. Whispers of their father's well-documented eccentricities, the constant, ever-present security details patrolling the ranch, and the underlying unspoken awareness that their dad was not just daddy, but Michael Jackson, a figure of almost mythical global status, constantly at the center of media storms, subtly yet profoundly permeated their sheltered reality, creating an inherent understanding that their family was inherently, profoundly different. Paris often recalled fleeting moments when they would briefly interact with the public, only to be utterly overwhelmed by the sheer adoration, the deafening screams, and the frantic energy that perpetually surrounded their father, giving them fleeting yet powerful glimpses of the immense, all-consuming force that shaped their every waking moment. This gradual awareness, even within the safety of Neverland, began to sculpt Paris's understanding of her family's truly unique and globally scrutinized situation. This dual existence, one of boundless love, whimsical fantasy, and nurturing within the meticulously constructed, protective confines of Neverland, and another of intense public scrutiny, constant media speculation, and necessary protective seclusion whenever they dared to venture beyond its gates, shaped Paris profoundly. She was, in essence, being rigorously prepared, albeit unknowingly, for a world she had barely glimpsed, a world that held both immense adoration for her father's artistry and piercing, often cruel, judgment for his personal life and her family's unconventional existence. As she inexorably grew older, the meticulously constructed protective barriers their father had so painstakingly erected would inevitably begin to crumble, tragically ushering her into a new, often harsh, and deeply unforgiving reality. This transition would challenge everything she thought she knew about her family, her father, and ultimately herself. Her extraordinary journey, perpetually shadowed by his unparalleled fame and tragically magnified by the later controversies that relentlessly pursued his life, was just beginning, leading her towards moments of profound revelation, public grief, and difficult, often agonizing self-discovery. The fragile innocence of Neverland would soon give way to the harsh truths of a world that showed little mercy for the children of legends. The meticulously crafted protective bubble that Michael Jackson had so devotedly built around his children shattered irrevocably on June 25, 2009. The news of his sudden and shocking death reverberated with seismic force across the globe, leaving millions in disbelief and despair. For Paris, then a tender 11-year-old girl, this catastrophic event marked an abrupt and brutal end to her sheltered childhood, plunging her into an intensely public and often excruciatingly painful journey of grief, revelation, and self-discovery. The world watched, captivated and heartbroken, as she stood beside her bewildered brothers at her father's globally televised public memorial service. Her small frame trembled as she bravely approached the microphone, tearfully yet resolutely, proclaiming words that would forever etch her image into the public consciousness. "Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine, and I just wanted to say, I love him so much." It was a moment of raw, unadulterated grief, a poignant display of a child's shattered world, instantly transforming her from Michael Jackson's daughter into a grieving icon, forced to navigate an unimaginable loss under the harsh, unyielding glare of billions. In the immediate, chaotic aftermath of his death, Paris and her brothers were placed under the guardianship of their beloved grandmother, Katherine Jackson. This period was defined by an immense and confusing upheaval, not only due to the crushing weight of their personal grief, but also as deeply unsettling details surrounding the circumstances of Michael's death began to emerge and dominate headlines. The subsequent highly publicized trial of Dr. Conrad Murray, Michael's personal physician, who was ultimately accused of involuntary manslaughter in the pop star's demise, thrust Paris and her entire family back into a relentless, invasive media spotlight. While Paris herself was not called to testify, the harrowing, often graphic details of her father's final days, the shocking revelations of his reliance on powerful prescription medications, the accusations of professional negligence, and the relentless, almost surgical dissection of his most private vulnerabilities undoubtedly took a profound and lasting toll on her young, impressionable mind. For a young girl who had been so meticulously shielded from the darker, more scandalous aspects of her father's immense fame and the controversies that shadowed him, these public revelations must have been jarring, disorienting, and perhaps even felt like a profound betrayal of the idealized, loving image of her dad that she had cherished with all her heart. The narrative that unfolded in court was starkly different from the one woven within the walls of Neverland. As she reluctantly entered her tumultuous teenage years, Paris began a powerful, albeit often challenging, process of asserting her own nascent identity. This assertion frequently took shape through her increasing engagement with social media, providing tantalizing, yet often raw, glimpses into a life profoundly different from the one her father had so carefully envisioned and constructed for her. She started expressing herself with increasing boldness through her fashion choices, her burgeoning interest in music, and her passionate engagement in various forms of activism, stepping further and further into the very public eye her father had fought so hard to shield her from. However, this amplified visibility, while a testament to her growing independence, also brought with it intense, often unforgiving scrutiny and, at times, harsh public criticism. The media, ever hungry for a compelling narrative, frequently pitted her burgeoning independence and outspokenness against the sacred memory of her iconic father, meticulously scrutinizing her every move, every new tattoo, and every public comment for clues about her inner turmoil or perceived defiance. This relentless comparison undoubtedly added another layer of complexity to her already challenging adolescent years. One of the most profound and emotionally charged aspects of this period was Paris's rapidly evolving understanding of her father's vast and often turbulent life, and his enduring yet controversial legacy. As she matured, she became increasingly, inescapably aware of the myriad controversies that had relentlessly surrounded him throughout his career, particularly the persistent and deeply damaging allegations of child molestation that had plagued him for years. While she has consistently and fiercely defended his innocence with an almost unwavering conviction, publicly dismissing the accusations as cruel fabrications and exploitative lies, the sheer volume, persistence, and sensational nature of these claims must have been an unimaginably heavy burden for a loyal daughter to bear. For a young woman who adored her father and held him in such high esteem, grappling with such pervasive public accusations, even if she believed them to be entirely untrue, would represent an immense psychological and emotional challenge. The constant, almost involuntary need to defend his character, to publicly reiterate his boundless goodness, and to champion his innocence became an integral, almost exhausting part of her burgeoning public persona, blurring the lines between personal grief, filial loyalty, and public advocacy. It is within this incredibly complex, often agonizing web of public trials, shattering personal revelations, unrelenting media scrutiny, and the crushing weight of her father's controversial legacy that we can begin to speculate about what Paris might have found unforgivable. It may not have been a single deliberate act committed by Michael himself, but rather the cumulative, suffocating effect of the chaos, the relentless public scrutiny, and the profound misunderstanding that his extraordinary life, and subsequently his tragic death, brought crashing down upon her and her family. Perhaps the unforgivable was the irreversible loss of the private, innocent, and relatively carefree childhood he fought so valiantly to provide, a childhood irrevocably stolen by the insatiable demands of fame and the corrosive nature of scandal. Or perhaps it was the crushing burden of inheriting his globally controversial narrative, forcing her at such a tender age to confront a version of him that violently clashed with her most deeply held, cherished memories and experiences. Her emergence into adulthood meant facing these harsh, often brutal realities head-on, embarking on a journey of discovery that undoubtedly presented her with truths far more complex, painful, and nuanced than the meticulously curated fairy tale life at Neverland. The unforgivable might reside in the sheer unfairness of it all, the relentless public judgment that seemed to negate the profound love and devotion she knew her father possessed. As Paris Jackson gradually, yet inexorably, matured into adulthood, her life transformed into a profound journey of self-discovery and a complex, ongoing reckoning with her father's monumental, yet often shadowed, legacy. Far from retreating from the glaring public spotlight that had defined her childhood, she actively embraced a life in the public eye, meticulously carving out her own distinct path as a successful model, a burgeoning actress, and perhaps most authentically, a soulful musician. This public platform became a significant, almost cathartic arena for her to process the profound complexities of her past, to openly share her unique perspectives, and ultimately, to courageously define her intricate relationship with the enduring memory of Michael Jackson. Her artistic expressions, particularly through the poignant lyrics and melodies of her music, have offered the most intimate and unfiltered glimpses into her inner world. Her songs frequently carry deeply personal themes of pain, the arduous journey of healing, and the relentless search for an authentic identity. These lyrical narratives implicitly reflect the unique pressures, the emotional turbulence, and the often lonely landscapes of her extraordinary upbringing. Through these powerful creative outlets, Paris has demonstrated an remarkable ability to channel her most profound experiences, transforming deeply personal struggles into relatable, resonant art. In doing so, she fosters a deeper, more empathetic connection with her audience, who find echoes of their own struggles in her raw honesty. It's in these vulnerable, artistic moments that one can distinctly sense a powerful process of catharsis, a deeply personal way of working through the myriad complexities of her past without necessarily uttering the explicit word forgive in a traditional, simplistic sense. Her music isn't about absolution for another, but about liberation for herself. Publicly, Paris has consistently and with unwavering conviction acted as an ardent and fierce defender of her father's character and legacy. Despite the relentless resurfacing of old allegations against him, particularly after certain controversial documentaries gained traction and sparked renewed public debate, she has remained steadfast in her deeply held belief in his innocence. With unwavering loyalty, she has consistently used her prominent voice on social media platforms and in high-profile interviews to vehemently refute claims she views as unjust, to tirelessly emphasize his extensive humanitarian efforts, and to constantly remind a often forgetful world of the profoundly loving, dedicated father she knew and adored. This unwavering filial loyalty suggests that for Paris, any concept of unforgivable might not stem from a specific, deliberate wrong committed by Michael himself, but rather in the profound injustices he endured, the relentless, often cruel, public scrutiny that hounded his every move, or the distorted, sensationalized narrative that tragically overshadowed his immense artistic impact on the world and his deeply personal, loving impact on her own life. Her ongoing fight isn't merely about clearing his name for her own emotional benefit. It's profoundly about preserving the truth as she intrinsically knows it, often for the benefit of his millions of devoted fans, and the sanctity of his artistic legacy. It's a battle fought for memory and truth as she perceives it. The very idea of forgiveness in this exceptionally nuanced context is far from straightforward. It might not be about explicitly forgiving a specific transgression Michael committed against her, but rather about Paris finding a way to forgive the overwhelming, often brutal circumstances that enveloped her childhood, the suffocating media circus, the constant invasions of privacy, and the immense, almost unbearable burden that came with being the daughter of such a globally iconic yet controversial figure. It is perhaps about her finding a profound sense of peace with a past that was anything but ordinary, a past irrevocably scarred by loss and public spectacle, and meticulously integrating it into her present identity as a resilient young woman. Her commendable willingness to openly discuss her own profound struggles with mental health, her past battles with self-harm, and her personal journey towards sobriety further highlight her extraordinary strength, her raw honesty, and her remarkable resilience in navigating a life lived under a microscope. These deeply personal experiences, intrinsically intertwined with the devastating aftermath of her father's premature death, unmistakably demonstrate a continuous, arduous process of healing, self-acceptance, and ultimately self-love. It's a testament to her strength that she uses her vulnerabilities to connect rather than to hide. Ultimately, Paris Jackson's life story is one of profound, inspiring resilience. She has moved far beyond merely existing as Michael Jackson's daughter to becoming a truly unique individual force in her own right, bravely forging her own distinct path in the worlds of art and entertainment, all while consistently honoring the memory of the complex, enigmatic, yet deeply loving man she affectionately called Dad. Her ongoing journey vividly illustrates that coming to terms with a complex past, especially one as globally scrutinized and publicly dissected as hers, is rarely about a single, instantaneous moment of forgiveness or absolution. Instead, it is a deeply personal, continuous, and often challenging process of profound understanding, gradual acceptance, and finding one's own authentic voice amidst the powerful, echoing legacy of a truly legendary life. She has chosen to live her life authentically, embracing her unique heritage while boldly defining her own destiny, proving conclusively that even in the longest, most pervasive shadows cast by a global icon, one can, with courage and tenacity, eventually find and illuminate their own radiant light. Her story is still being written, but it's a testament to her strength that she is the one holding the pen. Thank you so much to everyone who watched to the end. Your likes and subscriptions are incredibly valuable. And be sure to hit the bell so you never miss new videos and stay updated.